How to spawn an actor in an editor world with C++ in Unreal. Actually, it's not that different from spawning an actor in-game, but this time you can also do it without even having to open the world, so let's get to it. So as usual, we are in a completely empty header file except the function we're going to do today. So this is the spawn actor in world function, and this function is going to obviously spawn an actor in a world. As input, I'm going to feed it the actor class path, so the path of the actor we want to spawn in the world. So somewhere in your content browser, you have a blueprint that you want to spawn in the world. Well, you're just going to have to feed that path, and then the function is going to spawn it in the world for you. Then you have the world path, so the path of the world asset you want to use to spawn the blueprint actor. So you don't even have to open the world, you can just select any random world in your content browser and you're going to be able to spawn the actor in it. And finally, I have a last one, a little boolean right here, to decide if you simply want to use the world that is currently open in the editor instead of having to provide a path. So if this one is true, well, it's just going to ignore the world path right here and it's going to use the world that is currently open in the editor. So that way, you're going to have an easy way to spawn actors in the currently open world, no problem. And as output, that function is going to return you the actor that was spawned in the world. That way, if you want to do something with it, you want to move it, you want to attach it to something else, well, you'll be able to do it. So good, that's it for the header file. Now it's time to jump in the CPP. And here, as usual, we're gonna start with the include. So we need 3 includes today. The first one is the blueprint that we want to spawn in the world. So since we want to spawn a blueprint, we're gonna need to have access to its class. Then we need the world class to be able to spawn an actor in the world. We need to have access to the world, obviously. And finally, the last one, that one is the editor engine, and it's just going to help us figure out which world is currently open in the editor. So if this boolean right here is true, we're going to use the world that is currently open in the editor, and that's the class that's going to give it to us. And that class is only available while we are in the editor, obviously, so it's part of the Unreal ED module. So let's just make sure that the Unreal ED module is already in the build.cs file, and it's right here. So that's pretty good. I don't need to add it one more time. So perfect. Now we can go back in the CPP and do the logic of the function. And the first step to be able to spawn a blueprint in the world is obviously to load the blueprint that we want to spawn in the world. So here I'm just doing a static load object to load my blueprint using the path that we receive as input. And if it worked, it's going to return us a blueprint actor that we can then spawn in the world. But before trying to do that, I'm going to validate my blueprint actor. So first, is it valid? If it's null, well, we can't spawn that blueprint actor in the world because, well, it's not valid. It's not a blueprint actor, so you cannot really spawn it in the world. So that's the first check, pretty basic check. The second check is to make sure that the blueprint actor, the class of the blueprint actor, is a child of an actor, because if it's not a child of an actor, so if the variable right here is a widget, for example, the widget is still a blueprint, but it's not a blueprint actor, so you cannot spawn it in the world because that's how Unreal works. You can only spawn actors inside a world. So here I'm just going to make sure that the class of my blueprint that I just loaded right here is an actor. If it's not an actor, I'm not going to be able to spawn it in the world. The path doesn't lead to a valid actor blueprint. So here I'm just going to return null. I'm not able to spawn the blueprint in the world. I'm just gonna stop right here. But good, now we know that the blueprint is valid and it's ready to be spawned in the world. The next step is going to be to load the world, because we don't know really in which world we want to spawn the blueprint yet. Maybe we want to use the world path, or maybe we want to use the editor world, so the world that is currently open in the editor, and we don't know which one the user chose. So what we're gonna do right here is just identify which world we want to use. So here I'm just going to start by creating myself a little variable for my world. I'm going to leave it to null because I don't know what I want to set inside that variable quite yet. So it's just an empty world right here, ready to receive the world that we want to use. So good, the first world that we can use is the editor world. So if we set that boolean to true, we want to use the world that is currently open in the editor. So I'm going to set my world variable to be equal to the world that is currently open in the editor. So we can ask the editor, what's your world context? So get editor world context, and inside the world context, we can simply take the world, and that's going to set our world that we want to use to spawn the actor. So that's super simple. The second way we can set that variable is by using the world path that we receive as input. So here I'm just going to do a little else, and then I'm going to try to load the world that is at that location in my content browser. So using the world path, doing a simple static load object. Once again, this time I'm going to try to load a uWorld to set my world variable right here. Perfect. In that case, I'm also going to check to make sure that this world is valid, because it's possible that the path was not valid and was not leading to a proper world. So here I'm just going to check, okay, is the world equal to null? If it's null, I'm just going to return right away, because I'm not going to be able to spawn an actor in that world because, well, the world is not valid. So I cannot spawn an actor in an invalid world, obviously. So good. Now we have a valid blueprint actor and a valid world. Now it's time to spawn the blueprint actor in the world. And to do that, I'm just gonna scroll down a little bit right here. And it's actually super simple. It's exactly the same way you will do it in a game. So here you can simply get your world and do a spawn actor onto the world. That's it, as simple as that. Then you can just simply feed it the class of the actor you want to spawn. So the class of the blueprint actor you just loaded in the content browser. And that's going to give you the new actor that is spawned in the world. So now you have the actor and you can do whatever you want with it. You can move it around, you can attach it to something else, you can change a few settings if you want to, you can do anything you want with your actor, but we're not going to do that in this function. That's completely up to you. So here I'm just going to say that it was a success and that I was able to spawn my actor in my world. But before returning, I'm just going to add a little warning right here, because if you spawned your actor in a world that is not the editor world, so the world that is currently open in the editor, it's not the same as the one in which you just spawn your asset. That's completely fine. You can spawn actors in any world that you want in the editor. That's not a problem. But there's a problem when you're trying to open that world. So here, if you're trying to open that world without saving it, so if you're inside the world A and you spawn your actor in the world B, and then you're trying to open the world B, you have to save the world first. If you don't save it, Unreal is going to crash. That was not a problem before. In older version of the engine, that was not an issue. You were able to spawn actors in any world and then open them, no problem. But in newer version of the engine, you have to save the world first before trying to open it. Otherwise, Unreal is going to crash. So in other words, if you're spawning actors in any random world that is in your content browser that is not open in the editor, you can do it, but make sure to save the asset afterwards. That's as simple as that. Perfect. So that's about it. Now we can simply return the spawned actor at the end of the function, and it's time to jump in Unreal to test if it works. So in Unreal, we are currently in a new level that I just created. So I have my world right here. We're going to use that world to spawn our actors in it. So this is the new world we're going to use. You can see that it's completely empty and it only has the default actors in it. It doesn't have any of the new actors we created and the actor that we're going to use today. So good, we have an empty world to work with, and we also have a user interface as usual. So here I have the class path of the blueprint I want to spawn in my world. Super simple, it's just a path. I'm going to reuse an actor that I created in a previous video, but it doesn't really matter. You can use any type of actor that you want. And then I have another path, which is the path of the world, in which we want to add the actor. So it can be that level, the one that I have right here, or any other level. It doesn't really matter either. You can add it in any world that you want. And finally, I have a little checkbox right here letting me decide if I want to use this path or if I want to add my actor inside the world that is currently open in the editor. We're going to use that checkbox to control that. And one more finally, if we click on the spawn actor button, it's going to call the function we just created. So the spawn actor in world function right here, feeding it the path of the actor class we want to spawn, the path of the world we want to spawn the actor in, and finally the check state of the checkbox to decide if we want to use the editor world or not. And optionally, I decided that it will be nice if I was disabling the path of the world in the case that the checkbox is not checked. So if we want to use the world path, we're going to enable the text component, otherwise we're going to disable it, but that's completely optional. It's just for the user interface. So good. Now I'm gonna go back in my level right here and I'm going to open my utility widget to see if it works. And right here, I'm just going to spawn an actor. Here we go. I have a new cube right here in the middle of my world. Hey, here it is. And on the right, you can see that it is of type 12BP parent, because that's the class I wanted to use. That's the class I wrote right here, and that's the one I wanted to spawn in my level. So that's pretty good. I have my cube. Yay, I can spawn another one if I want to. That's pretty good. I can move my cube around. So here it is, move the cube, and I can spawn another one. I can spawn as many as I want. I don't actually need to move the cube. I can just spawn them, and you can see on the right that I have a bunch of new cubes in my scene. Pretty nice, pretty nice. What if I uncheck the world path? Well, first it's going to disable that variable right here because we're not going to use it, and we're going to spawn a cube inside the world that is currently open, which in this case it's the same. I am already in that world, so I'm spawning more cube inside that level. So, okay, it seems to work. You didn't see it, but here we go. I can spawn another cube, and here it is. So I'm spawning cubes in the world that is currently open. That's pretty nice. But what we're gonna do is go in another level to see if that also works and if we are able to add actors in the world that is not open. So I'm gonna create a new level, so an empty level right here. I'm not going to save this one because we want to be able to add cubes inside that level from somewhere else. So what we're gonna do is not save that level, and then from here we should be able to add cubes inside that other level without having to open it. So right here I'm just going to spawn an actor and it's going to add it inside that other level. You can see that it didn't appear right here in my viewport because it's created inside the other level. I can spawn as many actors as I want. I can spawn like 10,000 cubes if I want to. I don't need to open the level to do that. I can just spawn any random actors, as many as I want. I have my little warning though. If I try to open that level, make sure to save it first, otherwise it's going to crash the editor and you don't want that. So I'm spawning as many actors as I want inside the other level, so when we go back later on it's going to have a bunch of them. But for now, first, before we go there, I'm just going to uncheck my world path and see if I spawn my actor. It's going to add it in the currently open editor world, which is the level untitled. It doesn't actually exist in my content browser, it's not saved yet, so I'm really adding cubes inside that new level we just created. So we can see that it works fine. If I uncheck my checkbox, I'm using the editor world and that's working pretty great. Good. Last thing we have to check is to see if we really added some cubes inside that other level that we have right here. So we can see that the level was modified, the little star is right there, and if I try to open it, Unreal is going to ask me to save it first. I'm going to save it. I'm not going to save Untitled because it doesn't really matter, but I'm going to save the level, otherwise Unreal is gonna crash. So here I can save it, and here I can check in my hierarchy that I have a bunch of random cubes in the middle of the scene. I have a lot of them because I spawned a lot of them, but at least we can see that it worked. We were able to add cubes inside that level without having to open it first. So good. I guess that's gonna be it for today's video, and I'm gonna see you in the next one. Bye bye.